what you want to. Yeah. Right? Remember that feeling last in these past 3 weeks. All right, let's go. We don't
She is a 2-year member.
So, what would you guys like to talk about? Oh, goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all wages of every kind, the type of wages that you have to get an emergency fix of your computer. I apologize for having an abrupt ending to my last stream. I was not expecting Mr. Pibb to throw a couple haymakers. He got a couple punches in, but I won the fight. Normally I went to the bathroom and I placed the can of Mr. Pibb Zero Sugar. And here I was starting the episode last stream with good things to say about Mr. Pibb being back. And that's how he does me by spilling himself all over my keyboard. I know that sounds dirty, but bear with me. I put it right next to the computer. I know, a dumb move, very dumb move. Usually I have it at a safe distance away, which I have my drinks right now in that same safe distance away. I can't give up on you, Mr. Pibb. I just had to beat you up for punching me. Spill all over my computer, and I had a couple days to try to remedy the issue and the situation and make it, looks like Texas just scored. Watching the Texas A&M Texas game right now on the safe distance away from me as well. I had to take this bad boy to the computer doctor for a couple days to make sure this thing wouldn't die on me. Luckily enough, I saved my computer in just enough time that the cleaning was minimal and cheap to get done, and now I'm back on the air. But we will not let that happen again. That was way too scary, as I have about $3,000 worth of video projects on this computer I can't lose that I usually back up after I finish those projects, because obviously while I'm working on them, I can't have them backed up and not easily accessible for me. Because some clients, as you know, like to play Steven Spielberg and like to revise every little minute frame and detail about 4 to 7 times by the time their 45-second video is good enough for them. So I have to have that stuff readily available to me to make those revisions, so I don't back them up until I'm finished with them. Unfortunately, I wasn't finished with them yet when I did my last live stream. So it would have been catastrophic, none to say the least, to lose all that. I could start over, but it would just be very annoying. But nonetheless, we are here. We are back. So we are going to finish what we started from last episode. I was in the middle of recapping the Oregon versus USC game. And I know since we're on the eve of Washington, Oregon, seems a little bit expired that we have moved on from this conversation, but I'm going to finish it anyway because it is relevant to the game tomorrow. And I also am enjoying another Friday night with no gig, but tomorrow is a long gig for me. But I still will be able to gather and catch a good amount of the Washington game for the most part. Anyway, so we went through everything except for, obviously, the secondary and their issues at USC. Now, I was discussing that Thieneman is a sophomore and one of, if not the oldest member of that secondary, which means at best, everyone else is a sophomore, and others and the rest of everyone else are freshmen, and they are. Finney has been the best defensive back freshman in this season in the country. Kenyon Sadiq has been the best tight end in the country, full stop. Again, Finney is the best on the other side in terms of, especially in terms of freshmen. Unfortunately, he had a bad game against USC and probably his biggest test so far. Now, here's the thing. Say hi to Lemmy, everybody. What's up? I'm buying views with cute puppies. Oh boy, my monitor went out. I don't know why my phone struggles to stay connected via Bluetooth. Anyway, Finney had a struggling game. This is normal. In fact, I'm surprised it took this long for him to have this type of game. And it's also sort of unfortunate that it was against probably the best receiving core that he's seen. But here's the thing. And this goes into a bigger subject too. So I'm going to start with the bigger subject. Can the referees please stop having main character syndrome and thinking the game is about them? Now, I understand that you have to call the certain calls that are on the field. But in my experience as a basketball player, for sure, it's definitely way more prevalent in basketball. My experience transfers also to the days I played football, but especially with football now. These refs, for some reason, love taking over the game and deciding game outcomes and not letting the players play. The ticky-tack DPIs and all that kind of... What's going on, buddy? What just happened? What is going on? The entire world collapses when I do a live stream. I don't know what it is. Is this God's way of saying I shouldn't do live streams? Lemmy. Hold on a second, everybody. I'm actually going to let this roll. I'm not going to commercial. You okay? That was a Scooby-Doo ass run if I've ever heard it. Just pitter patter, taking off. Okay. You okay, buddy? Okay. I don't know, though. I feel like these refs, they get on some crazy ego trip where they like to take over the games and determine the outcome of the games. Here's a message to the referees out there. The game is not about you. You are the one to help move the game along. I am so tired of referees throwing flags, doing all this other crap, and I understand. You got to enforce the rules. Enforce them when they are there. Sure. I totally understand that. But slowing the game down just so you can have your little ego trip and get your 15 seconds on television, I have frankly had enough of it. Enough. Stop. I don't know if the Pac-12 refs suddenly showed up at Big Ten conference games. I understand the collapse of the conference created a loss of jobs, but send their ass to the Mountain West or the Big 12 or the American Athletic Conference. I don't care. I am sick of this. I am sick of them taking over these games and calling BS calls. And here's the problem that I have. I don't care if you decide, you know what, we're going to be ticky-tacky refs and enforce the rules, but you have to do it on both sides. I cannot tell you how many times that OPI was not called. The USC receivers, studs, yes, give them their flowers. They played well, sure. But there were also plenty of times that they got away with so many offensive pass interferences, I was starting to lose fingers to count. They push off almost every play. And somehow, a couple of times, the Oregon secondary players were getting pass interference called on them when they were getting pushed off on. One of the touchdowns, the guys pushed off of Ife Obadewu, and he gets the PI call. I don't care if you lose money because the refs, as a ref, that the spread isn't covered. Call the game in a fair way. I don't care. You shouldn't be betting on those games anyway. Let the boys play. That's all I'm saying. You can't allow one side to be physical and the other side to not. You just can't. That is unfair. And I would have said the same thing if it went the other way. I am tired of these refs thinking that they're the stars of the show. No, you are there to let them play, and if they go too far in letting them play, then you make those calls. 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns were attributed to Oregon's penalties. There was 14 free points. And guess what? If you bet the under, you lost. 42-27 was the final score. The money line was 59.5 points. 59 right there. 69 right there. 69 points. Nice. But that was the under. Or the over and the under. Look, I am not going to deny that Oregon played a pretty sloppy game. And the fact that they played a sloppy game and they won by 15, even better. Because even when you play sloppy, you still beat a team like USC. That's still good. And there were plenty of times that Oregon themselves could have put that game away, but they didn't. And then they really couldn't because there were some helpful calls by the refs. But I'm going to now track that down on the more micro level. That's the macro level. Screw the refs. Now, and this in particular, this game was a horrifically called and officiated game. I'm sorry. I don't have an issue with USC receivers pushing off and battling for a position like that. Fine. By all means. But then you can't call things like these BS DPI calls on Oregon secondary on those calls. If you want to call a ticky-tack game, call offensive PI the same as you would defensive PI. And I don't care. Both sides of the ball, Oregon secondary and USC's receivers, they got handsy. That's fine. If you let it go, that's fine. If you don't let it go, that's fine. But you can't let it go for one side and then not let it go for the other. Sorry, my monitor keeps going out. I don't know why. The Bluetooth or AirPlay or whatever plays better off my laptop than my phone, and right now I can only do it on my phone. So with that being said, though, Finney struggled today, or against USC last week. Finney struggled, yes. He got outplayed a couple times, but there was a couple times too he had some BS calls not go his way. And then same with the rest of the secondary. But we're going to focus on Finney right now because there was also one possession where USC was in the red zone. It was 3rd and goal, and there was an incomplete pass that forced USC to take that field goal that they doinked. And the person that batted that ball down was Finney. So, even at the low points and even having a bad game, if you're still making plays like that, big plays that have an effect on the game, that's all you can ask for. That's all you can have when you're having a low game. At least make the high moments of that low game count. And that's all you can really ask for. And again, this is naturally going to happen. Before this game, Oregon was the number 1 pass defense in the country. We, as fans, forget that this team is young and there's still a learning curve, even if the learning curve isn't as steep, because they're so talented. This secondary has so much talent. It is super talented. Now it's deep. The complete opposite of what it was in the past couple years. It is deep and it's talented. And we forget that they're young. And we're going to have young mistakes, young issues, and young lessons to be learned. So again, if you can learn those lessons in a win, that's even better. You can get up and play the next week and go from there. So, yeah, naturally that's going to happen where you're probably going to go against one of the better passing offenses in the country, and you're probably going to struggle as a young guy. Now, here's my view on this, though, in the mixture of Oregon as the secondary struggling this game with a mixture of the refs. This is just one of those games. This is one of those games you're going to have, and not just in the sense of struggling, but in the sense of, look, you're going to have one of those games where the refs just aren't your friend. They don't like you for whatever reason. They're calling everything on you for whatever reason. Their eyes are magnets to everything you do for whatever reason. You can't win for losing with these guys. And I think the biggest mistake that everyone makes, and this isn't any sport, but again, I'm just going to parallel it to my time, and I say basketball. I played basketball a couple years more than I played football. So technically I've played basketball and went further than I did in football, but I also had the same things in football when I played too. It's just in basketball, the refs control the game even more than football. It's crazy. It's really crazy. But anyhow, the problem that a lot of players get into is that when you see a refereeing a certain way over the course of the game, I'll say about 25% into the game, so I'll say a quarter and a half, you start recognizing the patterns of how a referee is going to call a game. Same thing with like a baseball umpire. You start, after an inning or two, you start realizing what the umpire's strike zone is, what he likes to call, what maybe a certain pitch tricks him. So, you know, he has a weakness at a certain pitch, maybe a breaking ball. He'll call a strike with a little bit looser of a strike zone because, you know, he doesn't see it as sharply as a fastball, right? You start picking up the patterns and what the refs like to call. Now, there's a certain level of adjustment that you make. You know, okay, I'm a defensive back, and I'm going to play a little handsy or whatever, but I'm not going to get away with it as much with this ref, we'll say. So I'm going to be a little less handsy, but blah, 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 so on and so forth. That's fine, well, and good, to the point where you're not adjusting in that way at least gets you to where you're not getting a penalty called every single freaking snap, which we were this close at Oregon with Oregon USC. But the problem is that you run into the problem of then not playing your style of ball. What I mean by that is, at Oregon, the secondaries who are great are called the D-boys. 10 years ago, in the pros, they were called the Legion of Boom. In Seattle, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Brandon Browner, you know, insert the rest there with the Legion of Boom. People forget the Legion of Boom, they were a physical, beat you up, you know, literally like the old days of the 90s NBA, where if you're going to get a layup and I have the chance to foul you, and I'm going to make you miss that layup by fouling you, but I get I'm going to make you earn those 2 points with on the free throw line, versus now where you give them an easy layup because, oh, it's just decided, right? The Legion of Boom made you earn every single catch if you're a receiver. They'd make you earn every single time that you would beat them on their route. They would make you earn every single time that a running back would beat them to the outside on like a toss play or something. That was the Legion of Boom. And again, even in the pros, there were days where the refs would call that crap every single time. Or more times than normal, more times than before. They would just get extra ticky-tacky. And you'd have to navigate that. But they never trailed away from their style. And that's what I feel like this Oregon secondary did, at least at USC. So, Oregon, the new D-boys. Okay? They are big. Finney is one of the shorter guys at 6'2". Aaron Flowers, I think 6'1", 6'2". Iffy, I think 6 foot to 6'2", like in that range. All these guys over 6 foot, at around 6'2" plus, good sized in terms of their weight and strength. They're fast, they're athletic, they hit. Kennedy, he had a pick. Really nice pick. Could have been a pick 6 if he jumped the route just a second earlier. And Iffy also had a great interception. So they still even got turnovers and made plays, even though they had a bad game, which they they did. They had not their best game. And if that's not their best game, that just says a lot about them as a unit. But anyhow, these guys are big, fast, strong, and athletic. Well, guess what you can be when you're that, especially against receivers like the ones at USC. You can be physical. Because the biggest advantage that you have as a receiver when you're bigger than like the guy guarding you or the safety or anything, you can literally push these guys around. Look at last year. Jeremiah Smith almost sent Nico Reed to the another shadow realm at Autzen. It got called for an OPI. Again, Jeremiah Smith never changed his style of play. That was just an unfortunate call for him last year. That he basically took Nico Reed's head off on his route. It didn't get called much more outside of that one call. It's unfortunate that one call basically lost them the game. But he never changed his style of play. And guess how it's worked out for him so far. So, the style of play for Oregon secondary, okay? They're not going to get pushed around. They're big. They're just as big as these receivers. They're as fast as these receivers. They're as strong as these receivers. So if these receivers push you, they're going to push back and maybe even push harder. And when when there are games where the referees let them play, nobody gets past them. That's why they're the number one passing defense in the country. Or were before last week. Whatever they are now, I don't care. I'm just saying. That's why they're as good as they are. They don't get pushed around. They play just as physical. They'll pop you if you don't check yourself. And then when you have the ticky-tacky refs that are going to call that, that's what that style leaves you open to. But I would much rather have these guys play that style because as a secondary, that style works way more than trying to run with the receivers like it's a basketball game. Because now imagine you're playing pass defense in basketball. So you have the point guard coming up the court, and you're a small forward or a shooting guard guarding the small forward or shooting guard guys out on the wing. And you're trying to stop that pass. Now imagine the basketball court is about 5 to 10 times bigger and wider. How hard that would be to stop a point guard from getting that pass to the wings. That's what being a defensive back in football is. Especially now where the rules are catered to the favor of the receiver. So what I like, though, is some of those penalties I will take. Again, I would much rather have a PI called than a guy getting torched for a touchdown. I'd rather, if a guy's about to get torched for a touchdown and he just goes and hits the receiver so he doesn't catch it, I much prefer that than letting that pass be caught to avoid a DPI. So with all the bad and the struggle that came with Oregon secondary, the one silver lining to come through with that is that I like that they didn't stop their style of play. They say, we play this brand of football, come at us, opposing team, and come at us refs, and we'll see who the best man wins. And they made plays that helped win the game still. And Oregon still won the game. So that is my view on that. That is the good, the bad, and the ugly of the secondary that were probably the group that struggled the most in that game. So on and so forth. Look, and all in all, we'll just give a nice summation of the whole game as a whole. USC has a better defense than last year. Their offense is probably similar, if not the same. They always, and just like always, this year have an elite receiving core. Elite. And that was always the Achilles heel of Oregon. I think 2 years ago against Washington. Elite receivers won those games. And this year, this shows that Oregon has benefited from those learning experiences, that elite receivers aren't an automatic win against Oregon anymore. They had that receiving core that USC had, and USC still lost by 15. That's good. That's a good sign. This was a Pac-12 classic, 42-27 score. But USC is on a trajectory of going up. They're leveling up. They improved on defense. They improved in the coaching of the defense. They're still not quite where exactly they need to be yet. But the number 15 rating that they had going into Autzen was probably pretty proper. They're a good team. They're not a bad team. They're not a great team. But they're still a team that will give you trouble. You know what I mean? So this was a pretty good win, pretty good play overall. To get that pretty good win, USC is not necessarily a slouch. There were a lot of good and bad about it. And just a solid win overall. So I am going once again to cut to commercial, and hopefully this is not the last that you'll hear of me, unlike last time where I had a nuclear explosion happen all over my computer, and I had to cut the show pretty much immediately. And so this time we're going to have a commercial break that we are going to come back from. So without further ado, I'm going to show my sports reel one more time as the nice commercial there. And we will get back to more news of the day, not really of the day. It was last episode, but the sort of recent news that is connected to the Ducks in a big way. So we're going to finish doing that and then move on to the Washington-Oregon game matchup tomorrow.
Hey, go get him. Go punch him in the mouth. Go play one, okay? Go get him out. Go get him right.
Hey, if you can't do, we can't do. 1, 2, 3. Right? Remember that feeling last year in these past 3 weeks. All right, let's go. We don't need.
She is a 2-year member.
welcome back. Oh boy, let me turn off the monitor there. There we go. Welcome back, everybody. We made it. We made it through the commercial break. We did it. Finally. Okay. So, the coaching carousel has just gone absolutely bonkers this year. We got Mike Gundy out, Billy Napier out, James Franklin out. The list goes on and on and on. And of course, the most recent one this week was Justin Wilcox. Now, there's multiple Duck connections here, and it's not just that Justin Wilcox was a former Oregon football player straight out of Junction City. JC, you know me. Lived there for a couple years. So Justin Wilcox, just Junction City native, former Oregon Duck player, became the Cal head coach, which makes my countdown to kickoff video, dated now, because I ended that video with him being the current coach at Cal. He's out. He's out as head coach. I don't know. I don't want to say for certainty that it was premature, because I feel like he's had a good run of having the ability to turn Cal around, and it hasn't quite gone there. Although with JKS being there now, with how he's playing as a freshman, I understand why he left, decommitted from Oregon, because he wanted to play it right away. Usually you think with freshmen like that you're like, okay, it's like a Dante Moore thing where you go in thinking you want to play right away, and then you learn your lesson, and then you realize I shouldn't be playing right away, and I need to learn and then do better after. JKS looks pretty good this year. Even when they got beat 34-0 by San Diego State, it wasn't necessarily because of him. He looked all right in that game even then. So I don't know. It kind of looked like, okay, Cal has the foundation built to have that upward trajectory. But at the same time, with the way Mendoza is playing at Indiana right now, you think, okay, that's probably a flaw in the coaching, that Mendoza couldn't do that at Cal. So it's weird. It's kind of a weird situation where it's like, okay, are you going to find anyone better than Wilcox right now at Cal? And I understand Wilcox hasn't really turned the program around like you were kind of expecting, especially with a guy like him who's defensive minded, because he was a defensive player and stuff. And before Lanning came around, Oregon maybe thought about him. Thank God we didn't pick him up. And, now people are thinking defensive coordinator type of stuff. It's hard, but so he's out. And the weird wrinkle in this, one, is that with all the coaching carousel stuff going on, all the firings and hirings and things like that going on, Will Stein, the offensive coordinator for Oregon, is still being looked at, obviously, to take up head coaching jobs and sort of having the same trajectory as Kenny Dillingham. Kenny Dillingham went to ASU, his alma mater, and so that was sort of understandable that he went there. But the biggest person right now, a person of interest for the Cal job, is Oregon defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoy. Again, they want a defensive-minded guy, a la Wilcox, but maybe a guy that's been a little bit more proven, like Tosh Lupoy. And the thing with Tosh Lupoy is that, sorry, I'm making noises. He grew up in Walnut Creek, California. So Bay Area. In the general vicinity of the Bay Area. A little bit outside of Oakland and San Francisco and stuff. Walnut Creek. I believe he played at Cal. Let me look that up. It says in 2008, Lupoy was hired as defensive line coach at his alma mater, Cal. So, yeah, he played. I don't know if he played, though. He just went to Cal? I don't know. It doesn't give him. Did he play? Let me look it up. Sorry. Did Tosh Lupoy play football at Cal? Yes, Tosh Lupoy. Okay, that's what I thought. From 2000 to 2005. So that was kind of the peakish era. Aaron Rodgers. So Tosh Lupoy was a defensive lineman for Cal from 2000 to 2005. A few years later, he was the defensive line coach at Cal. That was during the era when all the Duck fans were mad at Cal for faking injuries to slow down Oregon's offense. Tosh Lupoy was the guy. He was the coordinator and the coach when that was happening. It was Tosh Lupoy. The name was a derogatory term for Oregon fans about 20 years ago. And that's just hilarious how things kind of come full circle that he ended up at Oregon. So the temptation, though, is that Lupoy is proven enough, obviously, in the Cal program already even, to become head coach. And so he might be leaving. Who knows? And Lanning already came out and said, he wouldn't blame him, or his sort of biggest accomplishment as a head coach would be sort of building that coaching tree, which he is correct. He is justified in saying that. Nick Saban has a wide branch of leaves of his coaching tree. Lane Kiffin, Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, all these guys. So your biggest accomplishment as a coach is not only on the program level, but who you build up to be the coach of the next team. Kirk Cinetti, I think, is another one in the Saban tree. Can't forget him. So obviously Lanning doesn't really have any qualms about it. And, maybe it pays off. I mean, like I said earlier this year, Tosh's defensive coordinator seat was getting a little warm. Not hot, but it was warm this year at Oregon, because the fatal flaws that ended Oregon's season had a lot to do with the defense and the coordination of such. But this year, he's sort of proven himself in terms of, look, he's got the roster finally that he needs, and the defense is playing pretty damn well, run and pass. The vision is coming together for Tosh. And in previous years, arguably so, the vision wasn't quite there. There was flashes and moments of it, but it wasn't quite there yet, and that's fair. This year, if he stays at Oregon, his seat has stayed his temperature of his seat has gone down, in my opinion. Granted, we'll see in the playoffs, if Oregon goes to the playoffs, whether he's the weak spot in that again. So there's a lot to be said about that. But in other sort of Duck-related news, Chip Kelly was fired as the offensive coordinator. And the way that intertwines, obviously, is not because of the Duck relation, obviously. But then there is the potential of Will Stein leaving already. Forgetting Tosh Lupoy, but Will Stein in particular. So now, obviously, you have Oregon Duck fans. I can't even say scorn lover, because at this point, he didn't do anything necessarily to scorn it, or it's way past time to be scorned. We have quantitatively by the numbers metric moved on from Chip Kelly. And they're still saying, oh, we'd like to see him back as an offensive coordinator. Dang, Texas just got an interception up 27-17 with 2 minutes left in the game. That's a game winner pick right there if I've ever seen one. Texas is going to pull this out. Going to upset Texas A&M. This is a battle that I have been absolutely dealing with on two sides. I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to use the term washed. I'm just going to say Chip Kelly should never, ever, ever step foot in Eugene to coach Oregon football ever again. And this isn't a scorned lover thing. This isn't animosity towards him. I appreciate everything he's done for the program when he was here. But we don't need him no more. We just don't. That is the best. If you are one of those fans that want revenge on him, the best revenge is not needing him anymore. And we don't need him. He needs to stay away from campus. We don't need him no more. And that's a good thing. That is a great thing. Let's lay out all the reasons. But this is the two-sided front here is you have Oregon fans, and these are guys that I battle with that shit talk me on the internet because they're stupid. And I do this all day against these same guys, the same guys that want Chip Kelly back. And then you got the other side of the people that basically hate Oregon, and they're using the same arguments as the guys that want Chip Kelly back. So who's more of a fan in your opinion? Me or those guys? That's the question. But let's start. The first reason we don't why Chip Kelly should never come back to Oregon. One, we don't need him. Why don't we need him? I'm going to start with recruiting. We have Dan Lanning. And we'll say Tosh Lupoy on top of that as well because he's an excellent recruiter. Leek Terry, Rashad Samples, Will Stein. We have a squad of coaches that recruit like this program has never seen before. Ever. Even Rich Brooks, who rebuilt this program brick by brick over the course of 20 years, never had recruiting like we do now with Dan Lanning and crew. Chip Kelly hated recruiting. He did everything possible that he could to not have to recruit, which is the exact opposite of what you need to do in college football. That's why he wanted to go to the NFL so bad, because he didn't want to have to recruit. And Dan Lanning said it perfectly. Recruiting is the lifeblood of a college football team. Literally. You can't build your roster from a draft. You literally have to go and recruit these guys out of high school. Couldn't even get away with it in the transfer portal. And even then, Chip Kelly probably wouldn't do the job in the transfer portal. Mark Helfrich was the reason why Oregon got Mariota. He's the one who got him to commit and step foot in Eugene. The reason why Oregon had recruiting sanctions when Helfrich became the head coach was because of Chip Kelly. And I still firmly believe that was due to laziness. He just didn't want to recruit. So he wanted someone else to do it for him. And he was dumb enough to break rules. That is not a culture fit in Oregon now. You think Dan Lanning would let that shit slide? No. Hell no. Not a chance. The next reason is that the game has evolved from Chip Kelly. And again, I don't want to use the word washed, but we'll say this. When Chip Kelly became offensive coordinator at Oregon, there was plenty of things that were new and sort of translations of the old made into the new with the offensive scheme and everything that no one had really been able to adjust to yet. And I know he was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State last year. But again, Ohio State had basically an NFL roster in college. Another big run. Man, Texas is actually going to run away with this one. The offense doing anything at Ohio State last year had more to do with the roster than with Chip Kelly. He doesn't realize that because he doesn't like building rosters. It certainly helps when you have a roster. The next reason is sort of a mixture sort of the two here. And this is more directed at the fans. Taking a knee, get it over with. And this is the double-sided thing that I get. Because here's the thing. Oregon haters, and especially the SEC fan dumb fucks. These inbred, ignorant people that have no idea that football exists west of the Rockies and north of the Mason-Dixon line. They still think that Oregon football is the Chip Kelly identity. The blur offense, the fast offense that goes around everybody, that's undersized, underutilized, or undersized, underathletic, but overutilized to outperform their talents and their ceiling. And then when they hit a real good old football in the trenches SEC team, that they lose. And in 2008, 2009, when Chip Kelly was the head coach, that was true. Well, guess what? We got an SEC dude in our corner right now with Dan Lanning. The team identity and a brand is way different than it was 15, 20 years ago. You think Chip Kelly fits into that culture now? These fans, these Oregon fans that are still saying, oh, well, this is a great opportunity for Chip to come back. Why? What does he add to the Oregon program right now? Not a damn thing. He doesn't add nothing to it. And you sound just like these SEC fans that still use talking points from 2008 today. You sound just like the SEC fans calling Oregon not physical enough, not big enough, not SEC football, not soft, all exposed, fraud, all these dumb, like, retard trigger words. That have no substantive, like, substance, real arguments behind them. You sound just like those guys, but somehow you've managed to twist that into being pro-Oregon. And these are the Oregon fans I get into arguments with all the time. All the time. Because they have not moved on. I don't like using the current year argument. But we have gone through 3 to 4 coaches since Chip Kelly. We have Mark Helfrich, who is the same thing. You got Willie Taggart, Mario Cristobal, and Dan Lanning. 4 coaches since Chip Kelly. You still think the team is the same as it was with Chip. And here's the thing. The SEC dumb fucks were actually right to some capacity. So Chip was able to take us to new heights in terms of finally getting over the BCS bias and get us to a national championship game. But we couldn't get over the hump. And there was a reason why we couldn't get over the hump. Recruiting and just size and speed. Because Chip didn't recruit well, that bit us in the butt. Even with Helfrich. Because he was basically, Helfrich was just trying to do an impersonation of Chip. Because that worked for Oregon in the past 3 to 4 years before he became head coach. Well, there's a ceiling to that, and we hit the ceiling. And a guy like Helfrich wasn't going to get us past that ceiling. And the next reason, too, is Chip Kelly sort of started this new sort of era of the aloof, super genius, stoic, never show anything chess master coach that the NFL even glommed onto in the past 10 to 15 years, as well as college. Well, guess what? Passion gets somewhere. Everyone gets super hyped on the Ducks versus them, and all of Lanning's motivational speeches, his team meetings with movie clips, his locker room talks, getting the guys fired up to play. Where do you think Chip fits into that culture? What kind of motivating factor is Chip? How does he help? Okay? Players respond to that. They don't respond to, well, see, according to the analytics, we just didn't decide to go for it on fourth in that run, but we're going to get better on certain things, and I'm going to get the old chalkboard out and run it through. Hey, guys, so on this kind of thing, you gotta do this and then go here and then blah blah blah, and maybe next time just do this and this. These players know that. How many times have they been on the board with the coach? They know the X's and O's. It's about the Jimmies and the Joes. And you got to get the Jimmies and the Joes locked in and fired up and ready to go. Chip doesn't do that. We're starting to see the cracks in the foundation of the stoic chess master coach. You got to have your team on your side. You got to have your team ready to go to war for you. The X's and the O's are how they go to war. But if you don't get them wanting to go to war for you, what's the point? So please, it's not even the dynamic of the scorned lover that can't move on. Well, I should say not can't move on. Because these fans, these Oregon fans, they want Luke Moga run fast. They want flashy highlights and offensive scores and basketball scores on a football field. How many times do we have to learn that doesn't win football games, let alone doesn't win championships? You need to have a football team, not a basketball team and shoulder pads. And you want a coach that understands that and makes that happen. Dan Lanning's the guy. Chip Kelly, not the guy. We've moved on from him. We should move on from him. Some of you need to get out of the Chip Kelly era, okay? And this is why I have issues with all these fans. They shit talk me to no end. But guess what? I've been right. I've been right every time. Yes, do I appreciate that Chip Kelly took our program to heights that we haven't seen? Yes. we finally got to a national championship game. But it wasn't because of his coaching or his recruiting or anything else. If anything, Bilotti's probably more responsible for that. It was a couple years after Bilotti. Nothing changed. Chip Kelly didn't recruit any differently than Bilotti did. He just changed the offensive scheme. Move on, Oregon fans. Guess what? We have an SEC team now. We're not going to put up 50 points every game. And that's a good thing. Because guess what happens when we don't put up 50 points back in the day? We always lost. Now we have defenses that hold people to under 20 points a game. That means more. Not to use the stupid SEC catchphrase. But you got SEC and guys like Ohio State and Michigan. They're not offensive teams, really, but they're national championship winning teams. That's what we want. I am tired of people talking about Chip Kelly in Oregon. We are done with him. You know what's best? We don't need him. Because arguably he is washed. We don't need him. We are beyond him. We have raised the ceiling from him. That is a good thing. Why would we backslide? Clearly at this point, he's more of a liability than he is a net positive. I don't know if I properly illustrated my point, but I've said everything I could on that regard. So we're going to go to another quick commercial break, and we're going to hit the UW-Oregon game that's happening tomorrow. We'll be right back.
Hey, go get him. Go punch him in the mouth. Don't play one, okay? Go get him out. Go get him right.
Hey, you can't do because you want to. Yeah. Right? Remember that feeling last year in these past 3 weeks. All right, let's go. We don't need...
She is a 2-year member.
welcome back. All right, so let me turn off the monitor. There we go. So now that it is Friday night, Black Friday, the end of Black Friday, hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I myself had a chaotic one, obviously, trying to get my computer back, and then it turned out to be a pretty nice one after that. So hope you all had a great Thanksgiving holiday. Excuse me. Yeah. Okay. And then Friday. So tomorrow, luckily for once, the kickoff is at 12:30 in the afternoon, because that at least gives me a couple hours to watch the UW-Oregon game before I have to cover the Division III championship. And then right after that, an hour later, the Division I championship doubleheader for me for high school football. Should be fun. Big, long day on Saturday, but luckily the kickoff is early enough I can at least catch a couple hours of it before doing that, and I don't miss the game in its entirety at least, so I have something to say to you when I come back after the game. So with that being said, unfortunately too, with that type of kickoff, we are going to be back on CBS. Unfortunately, last week was not the last we are going to hear from Gary Danielson. That piece of crap. Thank God he's retiring. Unfortunately, we have to get him one last time in the regular season, one last game before he is nice and retired and out of the reach of the cochlear radius of Oregon fans. I cannot stand him. He's a piece of crap. I'm glad he's retiring and never covering an Oregon fan or an Oregon game again. He might be perfectly fine if he was covering anybody else, but with Oregon, piss off. I am very, unfortunately, they got to squeeze him in one last time against Washington, which I'm sure we'll hear all about the glazing of the Fuskies, as if they need any more from the likes of Gary Danielson. But luckily, we will keep that going, and luckily, I have been able to watch a lot of Oregon football this season versus last season, because last season it was always like night games, and I was falling asleep, by the end of the first half because I had to work early. So I'm not going to complain too much about kickoff time as this time around, although this time around I'm not working a W-2 job, a 9-to-5 with shift work, so I have the ability to watch the games more often no matter the kickoff time, so that is handy. But yeah. So that is a good sign, as always, at least in that regard for me. So the game between Oregon and Washington, there is no love lost between either teams. It is a heated rivalry. Back in the day, it was probably as equal of a heated rivalry as Oregon and Oregon State in the Civil War game. But I also think in certain years it's become more of a heated rivalry than that, and I think this is the era of time it's become more of a heated rivalry. It always sort of was, though. I can go into the history of that if you want. But there was some things that Washington did that made Oregon angry at them. And the first game was played in 1900, so it's not like it's a little bit younger than the Civil War game, but it's younger by a couple of years. So there is a long history of hatred and animosity between the two teams. Played at Mott Lake in Seattle. Beautiful setting, I will say. And I've wanted to go to a game in Husky Stadium. My grandparents and my currently grandma lived in Olympia for a very, very, very long time, nearly 30 years. few years after I was born. They moved to Olympia/Lacey, Washington. And they went to Seattle often, and Husky Stadium was one of those places. They were a little bit more highfalutin, though. They would go to Seattle to see the opera. You know, when you come into money, even when you're new money, you want to do old money things, right? Yes, so it is at Washington, so that is one element. And so this is a great atmosphere for a great game that has great implications. So here are the things to look forward to, or not forward to in the metaphorical sense of excitement, but looking forward in time. Here are the things. Washington has a good receiving core. It's not USC level. It's not Ohio State level. But again, it's another receiving core that will test the secondary. Just like a few years ago where Washington had an elite receiving core that was the weakness. This at least could be a potential weakness for Oregon again. So that is one thing to look at and one thing to hope doesn't happen again, and one thing to look for. It is at Seattle. Seattle, Montlake, the Husky Stadium there. Just as raucous of an environment as any other place. It is underrated in the overall sense of the college football environments. I will never, ever, ever say it compares to Autzen, but other people might have. Washington is better than last year. Damon Williams is having a better year than last year. Rightfully so. He's on the rise. He is a legitimate player as a quarterback. With those good receivers, the passing game, the passing defense is going to be tested. So that is something to look at. It's an away game. Oregon is 10-1, trying to be 11-1, and fighting for certain seeding in the playoff. But also facing a CFP committee that is looking for any chance to keep Oregon out of the playoffs. I am convinced of that this year. It seems like it with how much talk about 3-loss SEC teams, the fact that Texas just beat Texas A&M. They would much rather see Oregon lose, go 10-2 to say, well, Texas is a more legitimate team in the playoff than Oregon is. I am convinced of it. I am absolutely convinced of it. So that is one thing to look at too. So, Washington is 8-3, I believe. 8-3. Whatever the math checks out to having 3 losses. So their loss to Washington or Wisconsin kicked them out of the playoff contention. This would have been another playoff implication game had they beat Wisconsin. So it would have been a third team in a row that Oregon would have to beat or have to play that would go to the playoff if they beat Oregon, right? It was looking like that until the Wisconsin game. So Washington is no slouch this year. They're better than they were last year. Damon Williams is the full-on starter. He's not replacing Will Rogers. Sound like he's an Andy Griffith character. He's the legitimate starter, and he is pretty good. So there's a number of things here. So, and you'll notice I'm not really mentioning Jonah Coleman. All right. This is going to be a good game. I imagine it's going to be a bit of a battle. I don't care about the spread. I believe it's within a touchdown is the spread. Probably likely, since Oregon has been liking to keep games close this year. Some of the games they've kept close that probably shouldn't be close. Oregon is going to have to show up on pass defense. This is going to have to be the bounce back game for the secondary. And they're going to have to keep Damon Williams from throwing the long ball. Dang, what a catch. Too bad it was out of bounds. They're going to have to keep Damon Williams from being able to throw long. That's their game. Just like it was with Penix. It's throwing vertically and throwing downfield. That's the game they like to play. They like to set that up with Jonah Coleman. Last year, people forget it. People keep messing up the metrics, saying it's 9 yards. It was 9 feet, 3 yards that Oregon held Jonah Coleman rushing last year. That's probably not going to repeat again, but they need to be able to keep going on stopping the run and stopping Coleman. Oregon is on upset alert this game and this year, this time around. And I understand versus the rest of the matchups. Obviously, I think Oregon is going to be the team that everyone chooses to be on upset alert because Washington has weirdly been unranked for about every week this season except for 1 week. But they only have 3 losses, and they got their third like a week or two ago. They were potentially had a shot at the playoffs. It was weird they were kept out of the rankings. And then, of course, they lost once they got in the rankings because Huskies got a Husky. But they've flown under the radar just as much as you could argue for some people. I don't really argue this, but some people would argue Oregon is flying under the radar. It's reminding me a lot, I think, what was it, 2022? When Washington was unranked, Oregon was ranked. And it was Penix's first year, and they beat Oregon in Autzen. So on paper, it was a game that Oregon should have won, but Washington was better than what the paper said they were. This is what I fear was happening with Oregon or with Washington this year again, and of course, it's a home game for Washington, which is a hostile environment for Oregon. So Williams is going to test Oregon. He's going to be the biggest test for the team. He can throw a pretty decent enough ball for those receivers to get the ball deep. And he's a scrambler. I don't think we're going to see a 10-sack game like we did last year with Damon Williams. I don't think so, but the bottom line is just like the idea with Jada Mayava last week, the same thing. Get pressure on him. That was the problem with Penix. When Oregon had the game in their control and were going to win and had a handle on Washington's offense a couple years ago, it was when they were getting pressure on Penix. You got to get pressure on Damon Williams. I don't care if he scrambles. The scrambling can only last so long. You at least got to get pressure on him. If he scrambles running for his life, so be it. Relentless pursuit of Damon Williams. You can't let him throw the ball deep or throw the ball at all. You got to get after him. With Jonah Coleman, you just got to stop the run in general. It's pretty much the same, a similar enough squad. I think they could probably handle Coleman. He's nothing like amazingly special that you have to really look out for in particular, other than just stopping the run. And you want to stop him enough that you are not allowing the passing game with Damon Williams and stuff to open up. So on defense, this is going to be another test for the secondary. The secondary better show up this game. I am very intense about this game because, one, it's a rivalry week. Anything could happen, no matter how lopsided the matchup might be. And two, this is the last regular season of the game. And while Oregon could handle a loss to get into the playoffs, it's definitely best to win anyway to make your playoff case. And 2, you want to beat freaking Washington for the bragging rights. So I don't want this game getting out of control and letting a home game, a home atmosphere advantage game happen to where Washington pulls off an upset. So you have to get pressure on Damon Williams, stop the run. This is going to be on the D line to do so. Mateo needs to have another game to himself again. And Bear Alexander needs to keep doing Bear Alexander things. But the secondary, this needs to be their bounce back game. This is the perfect opportunity for a bounce back game. You have a good receiving core. This is your chance to test yourself and say, I'm gonna make a statement that not only are other receiving cores elite, but our secondary is elite. And that elite receiving core got one on us in one game, but not going to happen again because we're elite. And we learn, and we can play with the best of them because we are the best of them. So I want to see this defensive backfield, the secondary have the game of their careers this game. Dante Moore just has to keep doing Dante Moore things, not turn the ball over, and Oregon needs to run the ball well, and everything should sort of take care of itself on the offensive side. I don't think that Washington really saw Kenyon Sadiq last year. So it would be interesting to sort of see him establish himself to the Huskies this game. And what we definitely need to do is, because I don't expect people like Gary Bryant Jr. and Decoria Moore to be back, I am hoping that Oregon uses this game to sort of get it under control quick and early, and not coast, but keep it under control until the very end of the game, just to move on and hope that you have, come playoff time, people like Decoria Moore, Gary Bryant Jr., and everyone else getting healthy and coming back, and hopefully reversing whatever bye week curse that Oregon has where people get less healthy in the bye week. But as many times as you can, get as much time off as you can for the players to get healthy. That even if you're cursed in that way. So the injury report is long and like a CVS receipt for Oregon, but we hope it doesn't get any worse with that regard. So I think that this is going to be a similar game feel. I don't know about the score necessarily, but a similar game feel to how it was with USC last week. I think that Washington is going to hang in this game, and if Oregon doesn't play well, that Washington could take advantage of that. But if Oregon plays well enough, it should be enough of a spacing where they'll win by a possession or two, and handily enough that some of the scares will be at a minimum. But again, rivalry week. You just don't know. Sometimes, you know, when it piles on, it piles on. When it's off, it's off. So this game doesn't concern me, but it concerns me in the sense that anything can really happen. And I'm hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Realistically, you have those thoughts of like, okay, it's probably going to be another like 7 to 14 point game, we'll say. 1 to 2 touchdowns, possessions. But, you know, it's rivalry week. This is, again, going back to the Chip Kelly discussion, player motivation. Even crappy teams are extremely motivated to beat the good team if they're a rival. And Washington is not a crappy team. They're better than last year. They're certainly not as good as 2023. So they've had a dip. They have gotten rid of the dip in a way, but they haven't quite gone on the rocket power upward trajectory that they are expecting, obviously, within the coming years. They're no slouch, to say the least. They're going to give a battle, and this will be a test to battle test the Ducks. Oregon has already gone into hostile environments like Penn State, Iowa, all the sort of games like that. They can handle hostile environments, but how can they handle hostile rival environments? We don't know that. They are young still. Washington wants nothing more than to spoil our season, on top of having the bragging rights of winning the rivalry game. So the crowd's going to be rowdy. Granted, it appears from Kenyon Barner's Twitter that there's going to be a decent enough crowd, but a decent enough crowd for Oregon. So it's not going to be half and half, but maybe there's a big enough differential that it's not like super crazy. But nonetheless, it's still going to be rowdy. There's still going to be booze and water bottles and beer bottles, figuratively, thrown at Oregon at Mon Lake. So Oregon needs to come in and establish themselves early. You cannot give the home team at a rowdy environment. It's just like any team that's playing at Austin. You can't give that team, you can't give Washington a modicum of hope and we can do this, a moment of life. You got to kill that early. And luckily, Oregon has proven that they can handle raucous environments. But again, it's different when it's Penn State whiteout versus Washington, Oregon State, teams that hate you. They hate you for being you, and that's it. They don't hate you for wanting to win. They hate you as a person. And guess what? We hate you, Washington. I'm just gonna leave it at this, though. If Oregon plays like they did against USC, it will be probably a closer game than it was at USC. And I think it's because of and Oregon's sloppiness mostly came from the penalties. In reality. There were a few sloppy moments in terms of the play, but it was the penalties. There was a couple drives that were killed on Oregon's side and a couple drives that were kept alive on the USC side. If Oregon keeps those penalties to a minimum, they should be able to beat Washington. This is obviously not an impossible game to win. Just saying, it gives me a little bit of a scare, especially also because I can't really watch it. I kind of have to watch it passively while I get ready for high school football games. I will be watching it, though. But that's going to be the key, though, is making sure Damon Williams isn't making plays with his feet, for one, but for sure not being able on the side of making plays with his feet in terms of opening up opportunities to make plays with his receivers. This has to be a moment that Oregon makes plays in the secondary and shows they can hang with good receivers. Because guess what? If Oregon goes to the playoffs, and depending on who they play, it's not going to get any better. The secondary is going to get tested even harder with each and every game. So this is the time where they need to make sure that they can put together a good game as a secondary. That's the biggest I'm not as worried as with the defensive linemen or the linebackers so much as I understand where the linebackers are. They're not the strongest group on the field. The D-line, if they can get pressure on Damon Williams, then the secondary doesn't matter. If whatever the case is, the secondary needs to step up, though. For sure. This needs to be their bounce-back game. So there is plenty of capability for Washington to sort of be the spoiler, not necessarily of the season, because the percentage is still high for Oregon to get into the playoff, even if they lose to Washington. But it's the bragging rights. And there's still a higher possibility than other 10-2 teams that Oregon won't make the playoffs. They will try to find a 9-3 SEC team to put over a 10-2 Oregon or a 10-2 other team, lower level team, if they can. And that's because Oregon right now is third at best, fourth in general in the Big Ten. Michigan has a similar enough record that they put Michigan, and even last week before Oregon beat USC, they had USC over Oregon in the Big Ten ratings. They are trying everything they possibly can to keep Oregon out of the playoff. Whatever the case may be, they are looking for a justifiable enough reason to keep Oregon out of the playoff. Especially if they can have just as much of a justifiable reason to put a 3-loss SEC team in the playoff over a 10-2 Oregon. So it's still imperative that Oregon wins this game beyond bragging rights. They cannot let up. They can't have a game where they're off because Washington is the type of team to take advantage of that and steal a win. They have all the motivation to. They have enough talent that they're capable of it. They are at home. There's plenty of reason for them to do that. So Oregon has to get pressure on the D-line to ease some of the burden on the secondary, but the secondary still needs to be locked in. I honestly had different thoughts. These are similar enough thoughts that I had to Oregon versus Washington, but I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain what I was going to say last show, or at least write down what I was going to say this show from last show, but obviously I had a big jumbled mess that happened in between then. But I think I have covered the preview enough of UW versus Oregon that I think that is plenty good. I don't really dip into the stats and the analytics of things because sure, that means something and it's not 100% inaccurate or anything like that. I'm not throwing shade at the analytics people, but for me, the analytics are a reflection of what you see on the field already. So you already get enough out of it from what you see on the field. And so you don't really need to go into the analytics if you've already seen what's on the field. I don't have much to say about UW's defense. I'm just saying because the offense seems to be what's stealing the show, even though Washington's defense seemed to play pretty decently against Ohio State and those type of things. But that's what I'm saying in terms of the team as a whole. They're able to pull off playing well and doing these kind of things. But the thing is, the life that you give, the momentum that you give to a team like Washington is through your defense, their offense. So if you give their offense no hope, the defense has no hope. Even if the defense gets stops, because if the offense can't do nothing, the defense can't get stops all the time. So if Oregon's defense can shut down UW's offense, then there's no hope. There's no hope, and that's what they got to do. But yeah, like I said, I think I've covered it well enough. I think that hopefully y'all aren't mad at me for it. but I wasn't able, obviously, to get too deep into the analytics of things because that's just not how I look at it. But also, I just forgot a lot of the things that I was potentially going to say, and the notes that I made for the UW versus Oregon preview, I was kind of just going on my instinct and gut this time already, because obviously my rhythm got a little messed up with having to save my laptop and give CPR to it. So thank you for watching, for sure. And I think that is all that I have left to say, which leaves only one more thing to say, is to like and subscribe to the channel to keep updated on all the shows and everything that's going on. Please watch and engage with this. Let's keep the conversation going. Y'all might have something that you say that I don't even think about that could start an entirely new conversation. So that's why I need you guys to pay attention, subscribe, like, do all the dumb YouTube shit, and join this this community here. So yeah. So anyway, the only thing left to say is that, and then finally, thank you for watching, and have a good day.